once I started tapering down off medications and using metabolic strategies like food and exercise um, and all kinds and community and all of these things that we talk about, I started to really kind of lift up. Hi, my name is Garrison Grant. I am in remission from synthetic marijuana-induced psychosis and major depressive disorder. I am 8 years sober, and I am happy to be here sharing my story. It really started back in 2011 when I was 19. I had just finished up my freshman year of college. I was smoking, drinking, partying like a lot of freshmen in college at the time. And my friends and I walked into a smoke shop and we bought what we thought was, a legal pot alternative. It was called Supernova, and it's synthetic marijuana, K2 spice. Turns out it's about 40 or more times as potent as regular cannabis with the THC content. So a combination of that and a couple nights of binge drinking, partying, late nights with friends, and a lack of sleep, I kind of built up in my system where I started having delusions and mania, thinking really grandiose thoughts, thinking that I was receiving messages and just a lot of racing thoughts, racing moments, and I knew at that time that I needed to seek help. I told my parents, like, something's not right. This is too much. So we raced to the emergency room. And again, this was 2011. I'm 19, and not a lot of people at that time knew about synthetic marijuana, let alone synthetic marijuana-induced psychosis. So as a young male, 19-year-old, winding up in the emergency room, they kept me over in the psych ward for, I believe the first time was 4 nights, and gave me quite a heavy dose of antipsychotics to quote unquote put the fire out. And they were kind of thinking that I was schizophrenic or bipolar as having a first break episode. I got out, I saw a psychiatrist. I might have came off my medication too soon, or I had a lapse in my medication. And then a couple weeks later, I went back into another psych hospital, this time for 14 days, and had even more medicine brought on. And this time it was even more traumatic. I spent over 48 hours, I believe, I don't even really remember, in a solitary confinement on just a mattress and a blank room. Being a 19-year-old kid, going from, the captain of the lacrosse team on the, state champions, state runner-up hockey, being a Division III college athlete my freshman year, kind of having a bit of an ego in high school and having a more or less normal upbringing. I was shook. It was a lot for me. It was really traumatic to be in that environment, and for me to be going through these things. And that was really the start of a long 6-7 year journey of in and out of school on different medications, inpatient psychiatry, kind of trying everything to get better. And it was a really rocky college career, because that had happened the week before my sophomore year was about to start. So I took that fall semester off, and then I went back in the spring, but it just wasn't the same, and I wasn't in a good groove. Ended up dropping out, and over the course of 7.5 years, I took 5 leaves of absence and numerous semesters off, working kind of odd jobs in my hometown, some semesters, other times just being in my house, socially anxious. And it wasn't until about 2016 where I started to really turn things around through these metabolic strategies. Through this experience, my mom went back to school to become a functional medicine health coach. She started learning about food as medicine. I started reading things like Mark Hyman and getting intrigued by the fact that there could be other things besides medication to get me better. It's not like it was ever a black and white situation. It's always an up and down, or a lot of baby steps that built on itself. So diet obviously was a big piece for me, but getting back on a hockey team and getting involved in the entrepreneurship club at Siena, and meeting my fiance, and then finally getting sober were were some of the biggest pieces for me. And then tapering off medications that kind of fully uplifted me out of this back in 2016, 2017. And since then, life has just been kind of gradually getting better and better. I've been feeling good, and I feel this feeling of sobriety and my body healing. I'm 168 pounds now. I was up to 210 at my worst in 2014, 2015. And running in triathlons and doing high rocks competitions and all kinds of things that I never thought back then when I was in the depths of my struggles would be possible. If someone were to ask me why try metabolic strategies as opposed to just medication, I would say that I did try just medication for years, for 5-6 years. And I vividly remember being skiing at one point, going downhill skiing with my family. And this is something I've done like my whole life. And I just would have at the time of my life when I was a kid buzzing around the mountain. And I remember thinking to myself, like, why aren't I having fun? Like, this is miserable. Like, I was just being so frustrated. Like, I don't get it. Why do I feel this way? There's times where I was so medicated that I couldn't even really think or function or be myself. It took a lot. It took hits on my confidence, on my weight, on how I was showing up, on just my personality as a whole. Once I started tapering down off medications and using metabolic strategies like food and exercise and all kinds, and community and all of these things that we talk about, I started to really kind of lift up and take more of an active mindset, I would say, in my recovery. For a while, I was kind of young and naive, and I thought the doctors knew everything. I thought, of course, yeah, I'll just, like, you guys are the experts. I'll just take it if that's what you say and think. And I was in that for a very long time. But yeah, knowing what I know now, I would urge people to try everything. A few years ago, I was working at Vanderbilt in their inpatient psychiatric unit as a behavioral health specialist. And I had also went back to school at night online through George Washington University to get my master's of public health. And I really wanted to dive into this world of improving mental health systems. And I came across, actually, I went to a conference all about nutrition and mental health out in Western Massachusetts. And I saw Dr. Georgia Eade speak all about metabolic therapies, and she started presenting the research about the French inpatient study with 43% clinical remission. And I kind of had a moment in the crowd where I was like, holy cow, it's not just, eat better, nutritional psychiatry, because I was obviously geeking out on people like Dr. Drew Ramsey and Mark Hyman and all of these things at the time. I was like, holy cow, like actual medical intervention for this is making people achieve amazing results. So I dove into the research. I discovered Dr. Chris Palmer, and I wrote about this as my master's of public health thesis, how a public health approach towards integrating ketogenic therapy for the treatment of serious mental illness. And I reached out to Dr. Palmer and wanted to learn about more of the research. And sure enough, he was in need for a marketing / right-hand man at the time. And I ended up becoming the director of marketing and executive operations, and helped build what is now MH², which is a new place program up in Boston, Massachusetts, where we're open for healing and accepting patients to use all of these metabolic strategies. And it's really special to me because a lot of these strategies that are in place with MH² are things that I have used and could have used in the past. And it's really exciting to be part of.
Thank you for watching. If you want to see more, check out these recommended videos. Also, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with our content and help us expand the movement. And if you want to sign up for our newsletter, access our resources, read the latest research, or check out the Think Smart framework, click here to visit our website. See you on the next video.